Deep in the Turkish highlands, archaeologists uncovered something that shouldn't exist. Massive stone pillars arranged in perfect circles, carved with intricate symbols and weighing up to 20 tons each. The catch? This monument was built 11,000 years ago by hunter-gatherers who supposedly hadn't even invented pottery yet. According to everything we thought we knew about human history, these people were living in small nomadic groups, struggling just to survive. They definitely weren't organizing massive construction projects that would challenge modern engineering capabilities. But there it stands. Göbekli Tepe forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth about our past. Either our entire understanding of ancient civilizations is fundamentally wrong, or something much more sophisticated than we've been taught once existed on this planet. What you're about to discover will challenge everything you believe about human history and reveal evidence of a lost global civilization that possessed knowledge we're only just beginning to rediscover. The evidence isn't hidden in dusty libraries or classified government files. It's carved into mountainsides, built into temple foundations, and scattered across every continent on Earth. Megalithic structures demonstrating impossible precision. Ancient technologies that rival modern capabilities. Mathematical knowledge encoded in stone that wouldn't be rediscovered for millennia. And most disturbing of all, identical construction techniques found at sites separated by thousands of miles and supposedly thousands of years. This isn't about aliens or ancient astronauts. This is about recognizing that human civilization is far older and far more advanced than conventional archaeology wants to admit. The builders of these monuments possessed engineering knowledge that we've lost. They understood principles of physics, mathematics, and energy manipulation that our textbooks claim weren't discovered until the modern era. And they left behind a trail of evidence so obvious and so consistent that ignoring it requires willful blindness. Over the next several episodes, we're going to examine 10 ancient civilizations that prove a sophisticated global culture once dominated this planet. We'll explore construction techniques that defy explanation, technologies that shouldn't have existed, and patterns of knowledge that suggest these weren't isolated cultures developing independently. They were connected. They shared information, techniques, and possibly even a common origin that's been systematically erased from our historical record. But before we dive into the individual civilizations, we need to understand what we're really looking at. When archaeologists find a site like Göbekli Tepe, they're forced to choose between two explanations. Either rewrite the timeline of human development, or find ways to minimize and explain away what they've discovered. Unfortunately, the academic establishment has consistently chosen the second option, creating elaborate theories to preserve existing narratives rather than accepting the obvious implications of the evidence. The result is a version of history that makes no sense when you look at the actual artifacts. We're told that ancient people gradually developed from primitive Stone Age cultures into more sophisticated civilizations over thousands of years. But the archaeological record shows the opposite pattern. The oldest sites often display the most advanced techniques, with later cultures showing declining capabilities rather than progressive improvement. Göbekli Tepe represents the perfect example of this reversed timeline. Built over 11,000 years ago, it demonstrates planning, organization, and technical skill that rivals any ancient monument. The massive T-shaped pillars weren't just quarried and transported from miles away. They were carved with precision that would challenge modern stoneworkers, arranged according to geometric principles that suggest advanced mathematical knowledge, and decorated with symbolic art that implies sophisticated abstract thinking. Recent analysis using computer modeling revealed that the entire complex was designed as a unified whole rather than individual structures added over time. The builders used an equilateral triangle as the foundational geometry, with 3 temple enclosures positioned according to mathematical relationships that required detailed planning and surveying capabilities. This wasn't primitive religious architecture. This was advanced engineering disguised as spiritual symbolism, But here's where it gets really interesting. The techniques used at Göbekli Tepe aren't unique to that site. Similar construction methods, identical geometric principles, and even the same symbolic motifs appear at megalithic sites around the world. Structures that mainstream archaeology claims were built by completely separate cultures with no contact between them. The mathematical odds of independent development of identical sophisticated techniques are so small they approach impossibility. Consider the precision requirements alone. At Göbekli Tepe, massive stone blocks weighing up to 20 tons were quarried, transported, and positioned with accuracy measured in millimeters. The surfaces are flat to tolerances that would satisfy modern construction standards. The joints between stones are so precise that you can't slip a knife blade between them. This level of accuracy requires not just skilled craftsmanship, but sophisticated tools and measuring techniques that supposedly didn't exist for another 6,000 years. The symbolic artwork adds another layer of complexity. The pillars feature carved reliefs of animals, abstract symbols, and geometric patterns that demonstrate detailed knowledge of both local and distant fauna. Some animals depicted aren't native to the region, suggesting the builders had contact with or knowledge of distant lands. The artistic style shows consistent conventions and technical approaches that imply formal training and shared cultural traditions rather than isolated artistic development. What makes Göbekli Tepe even more mysterious is what happened to it. Rather than being abandoned or destroyed by invaders, the entire complex was deliberately buried under tons of earth around 8,000 years ago. Someone made the conscious decision to hide this monument from future generations, preserving it perfectly for modern discovery. This wasn't natural abandonment. This was systematic concealment that required enormous effort and planning. The burial of Göbekli Tepe fits a disturbing pattern found at advanced ancient sites worldwide. Many of the most sophisticated megalithic structures show evidence of deliberate concealment or destruction during specific time periods. It's as if someone was systematically erasing evidence of advanced ancient capabilities, leaving only the most primitive examples for later cultures to discover and archaeologists to study. This pattern of concealment extends to the knowledge systems these monuments represent. Göbekli Tepe wasn't just an impressive construction project. It was an astronomical observatory, a calendar system, and possibly an educational center where advanced knowledge was taught and preserved. The arrangement of the pillars tracks celestial movements with precision that requires detailed understanding of astronomical cycles spanning thousands of years. The geometric relationships encoded in the site's layout demonstrate mathematical knowledge that includes complex geometric principles, astronomical calculations, and possibly even advanced physics concepts related to energy and resonance. These weren't primitive people scratching survival symbols on rocks. These were sophisticated engineers and scientists working with knowledge systems that we're only beginning to understand. But Göbekli Tepe is just the beginning. As we examine other ancient sites around the world, the evidence for a lost global civilization becomes overwhelming. In the mountains of Bolivia, we find Pumapunku, where stone blocks weighing over 100 tons were cut with laser-like precision and fitted together using interlocking joints that would challenge modern manufacturing capabilities. The famous H-blocks at this site are identical in shape and dimension, suggesting mass production techniques that weren't supposed to exist until the Industrial Revolution. The precision achieved at Pumapunku defies rational explanation using conventional archaeological theories. Stone surfaces are flat to within 2/10,000ths of an inch. Complex angles are cut with accuracy that requires advanced measuring instruments and cutting tools. Most impossibly, the builders created perfectly cylindrical holes that appear to have been drilled using high-speed rotary equipment. Yet according to mainstream archaeology, the builders of Pumapunku only had stone chisels and bronze tools. The engineering sophistication doesn't stop with individual stone cutting. The entire site demonstrates understanding of modular construction principles structural engineering, and architectural planning that suggests formal engineering education and possibly even standardized building codes. The interlocking joint systems show knowledge of stress distribution, earthquake resistance, and thermal expansion that wasn't formally understood until modern times. Moving from South America to Egypt, we encounter the Great Pyramid of Giza, where 2.3 million stone blocks were assembled with mathematical precision that rivals modern construction capabilities. The pyramid's base is level to within 2 centimeters across 13 acres, a tolerance that would satisfy contemporary building standards. The orientation aligns with cardinal directions to accuracies measured in arc minutes, requiring surveying capabilities that weren't supposed to exist for thousands of years. Recent discoveries suggest the pyramid builders employed hydraulic engineering techniques that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of fluid dynamics, pressure systems, and mechanical advantage. Evidence points to the use of water-powered lifting mechanisms, internal shaft systems for moving massive blocks vertically, and possibly even floating platforms for positioning stones with precision. These aren't primitive construction techniques. These are advanced engineering solutions that require detailed knowledge of physics and mathematics. The pattern continues across every continent. In Lebanon, the megalithic stones of Baalbek include blocks weighing over 1,000 tons that were quarried, transported, and precisely positioned at heights of 20 feet above ground level. Modern cranes cannot lift stones of this size, yet ancient builders moved them with apparent ease and positioned them with accuracy measured in millimeters. The precision at Baalbek challenges every assumption about ancient capabilities. The massive limestone blocks known as the trilithon measure roughly 64 feet long, 14 feet high, and 12 feet deep. Each stone was cut with surfaces so smooth they appear polished by modern machinery. The joints between blocks are so tight that not even a knife blade can fit between them. Yet these monuments were supposedly built using primitive tools and manual labor. Even more mysterious is the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, a 1,200-ton monolith that remains in the quarry near Baalbek. This single stone block weighs more than 4 modern Boeing 747 aircraft combined. The ancient builders quarried this massive block with perfect precision, creating clean edges and smooth surfaces that would challenge contemporary stone cutting equipment. But for unknown reasons, they never moved it to the construction site, leaving it as a permanent testament to their impossible capabilities. The transportation logistics alone should have been insurmountable. Moving a 1,200-ton stone block requires engineering solutions that push the boundaries of modern technology. Today, moving such massive weights requires specialized hydraulic equipment, computer-controlled systems, and carefully planned routes with reinforced surfaces. Yet ancient builders accomplished this feat routinely, positioning multiple massive blocks with millimeter precision at significant heights above ground level. The construction techniques become even more puzzling when we examine the foundation work at Baalbek. The massive blocks rest on precisely cut stone foundations that demonstrate understanding of load distribution, ground pressure, and structural stability. The builders calculated weight loads, stress patterns, and foundation requirements with accuracy that matches modern structural engineering principles. This wasn't trial and error construction. This was methodical engineering based on sophisticated mathematical knowledge. Across the Pacific Ocean, we encounter another impossible construction project that defies conventional explanations. Nan Madol, built on artificial islands in the middle of the ocean near Pompeii, consists of massive basalt columns weighing multiple tons each. The builders transported over 700,000 tons of basalt rock from quarries 18 kilometers away, then assembled them into complex architectural structures built directly on coral reef foundations. The logistics of building Nan Madol challenge everything we understand about ancient maritime capabilities. The builders created 98 artificial islands by hauling massive basalt blocks across open ocean, then positioned them with precision on unstable coral reef foundations. The basalt columns were cut from naturally formed volcanic rock, but the cutting and shaping required tools and techniques that left surfaces smooth enough to create weatherproof joints without mortar. The architectural planning demonstrates advanced understanding of marine engineering, tidal forces, and structural dynamics. Building stable structures on coral reef foundations requires detailed knowledge of ocean currents, tidal variations, and underwater geology. The builders solved complex engineering problems related to saltwater corrosion, wave action, and foundation stability using techniques that weren't formally understood until modern times. What makes Nan Madol particularly significant is its isolation. This massive construction project was completed on a remote Pacific island with limited natural resources and no apparent connection to other advanced civilizations. Yet the engineering sophistication rivals any ancient monument, suggesting the builders possessed knowledge systems that were either developed independently to an impossible degree or inherited from some common advanced source. The pattern of impossible precision extends to ancient Greek technology, where the Antikythera mechanism represents the most sophisticated ancient artifact ever discovered. This bronze device contains gear systems so complex that they replicate the movements of celestial bodies with mathematical accuracy that wouldn't be achieved again until the invention of mechanical clocks over 1,000 years later. The mechanism demonstrates knowledge that challenges our entire understanding of ancient Greek capabilities. The device uses differential gearing, a concept supposedly invented during the Industrial Revolution. It calculates lunar orbital irregularities using pin and slot mechanisms that require detailed understanding of celestial mechanics. The bronze gears are manufactured to tolerances that would satisfy modern precision machining standards. Yet they were created using hand tools and techniques that left no other surviving examples. Recent analysis revealed that the mechanism could predict eclipses decades in advance, track the 4-year Olympic cycle, and calculate the positions of known planets with accuracy that required mathematical knowledge equivalent to modern astronomical software. The ancient Greeks who built this device possessed computational capabilities that we assumed didn't exist until the development of modern mathematics and mechanical engineering. The technological sophistication becomes even more remarkable when we consider that the Antikythera mechanism wasn't a unique prototype. Evidence suggests it was one example of a sophisticated tradition of mechanical engineering that included multiple similar devices. References in ancient texts describe comparable astronomical computers, suggesting the Greeks had developed an entire industry of precision mechanical devices that has been almost completely lost to history. But the most compelling evidence for a lost global civilization comes from examining the electromagnetic and acoustic properties built into megalithic sites worldwide. Modern scientific analysis reveals that ancient builders possessed detailed understanding of energy manipulation, electromagnetic fields, and acoustic resonance that rivals contemporary knowledge in these specialized fields. At Karnak in France, where 80,000 megaliths are concentrated across the landscape, researchers discovered that the dolmens function as electromagnetic coils that amplify and release telluric energy throughout the day. The stones were specifically chosen for their high quartz content, making them piezoelectric generators that produce electricity when subjected to vibrations. The megaliths were positioned on earthquake fracture zones, creating constant vibrations that keep the stones electromagnetically active. The electromagnetic effects aren't accidental byproducts of stone construction. They're engineered features that require sophisticated understanding of crystalline properties, electromagnetic induction, and geological energy systems. The builders transported these quartz-rich stones from quarries 60 miles away specifically for their electrical properties, then positioned them according to precise geometric relationships that optimize electromagnetic field generation. Similar electromagnetic properties have been discovered at megalithic sites across multiple continents. Stone circles in Britain, pyramid complexes in Egypt, and temple foundations in South America all demonstrate identical understanding of piezoelectric effects, electromagnetic field manipulation, and acoustic resonance. The mathematical precision required to engineer these effects suggests the builders possessed knowledge of physics principles that weren't formally discovered until the 20th century. The acoustic properties add another layer of sophistication. Many megalithic sites were designed as resonance chambers that amplify specific sound frequencies while filtering out others. The builders understood how stone shapes, chamber dimensions, and material properties affect acoustic behavior, creating spaces with sound characteristics that enhance human consciousness and perception. At Newgrange in Ireland, the passage tomb was engineered to create acoustic effects that transform human voices into otherworldly sounds. The chamber dimensions create standing wave patterns that amplify certain frequencies while dampening others, producing audio effects that seem to separate voices from their physical sources. These aren't accidental acoustic properties. They're engineered features that require detailed understanding of wave physics and psychoacoustic effects. The pattern repeats at sites worldwide. The King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid creates acoustic resonance at frequencies that affect human brain wave patterns. Mayan temples in Central America demonstrate similar acoustic engineering designed to create specific psychological effects during ceremonies. Ancient amphitheaters achieve acoustic perfection that allows whispered conversations to be heard clearly across vast distances. These sophisticated acoustic and electromagnetic properties reveal that megalithic sites weren't just impressive stone constructions. They were engineered environments designed to manipulate energy fields and consciousness states using principles of physics that we're only beginning to understand. The builders possessed knowledge of how electromagnetic fields affect human perception, how specific sound frequencies influence consciousness, and how stone structures can be designed to optimize these effects. The implications become staggering when we realize that identical engineering principles appear at sites built by supposedly unconnected cultures, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. Either multiple isolated civilizations independently developed identical, sophisticated knowledge of electromagnetic physics and acoustic engineering, or these sites represent remnants of a single advanced global civilization that possessed unified scientific knowledge. The mathematical odds of independent development become essentially impossible when we examine the precision involved. Creating electromagnetic effects requires understanding of crystalline properties, field theory, and geological energy systems. Engineering acoustic resonance demands knowledge of wave physics, material science, and psychoacoustic principles. Achieving these effects with Stone Age tools requires manufacturing capabilities that challenge modern precision standards. Yet site after site demonstrates identical sophistication achieved using identical techniques with identical mathematical relationships. The builders shared knowledge systems that encompassed advanced physics, precision engineering, and sophisticated understanding of how technology affects human consciousness. This wasn't primitive religious construction. This was applied science disguised as spiritual architecture. The evidence becomes even more compelling when we examine the metallurgical achievements of ancient civilizations that supposedly never developed advanced metalworking techniques. In Peru, archaeologists have discovered bronze artifacts containing tin concentrations that required sourcing materials from locations thousands of miles away. The ancient Peruvians somehow established trade networks spanning entire continents, transporting specialized materials across impossible distances using transportation methods that shouldn't have existed. But it's not just the logistics that challenge our understanding. The metallurgical analysis reveals alloy compositions that demonstrate sophisticated knowledge of metal properties, melting points, and chemical interactions. These ancient metalworkers understood how different metals behave when combined, how temperature affects material properties, and how to achieve specific characteristics through controlled alloying processes. They were practicing advanced materials science thousands of years before these principles were supposedly discovered. The precision extends to manufacturing techniques that rival modern capabilities. Ancient bronze artifacts show evidence of casting methods that require controlled temperature environments, precise mold construction, and detailed understanding of thermal expansion and contraction. Some pieces demonstrate manufacturing tolerances that would satisfy contemporary quality control standards, achieved using techniques that left no trace of the sophisticated equipment that would have been required. In China, ancient swordmakers created steel with carbon content distributions that match modern computer-controlled manufacturing processes. The Damascus steel techniques produce metal with microscopic structures that we couldn't replicate until the development of electron microscopy and advanced metallurgical analysis. These weren't accidental achievements. They were the result of systematic knowledge and controlled manufacturing processes that suggest formal engineering education and standardized production methods. The pattern extends to precious metal working that demonstrates understanding of chemistry and physics that wasn't formally developed until recent centuries. Ancient goldsmiths created alloys with specific properties, achieved surface treatments that require controlled chemical environments, and produce decorative effects that demand detailed knowledge of oxidation, reduction, and electrochemical processes. They were manipulating matter at the molecular level, using techniques that modern science struggled to reverse engineer. Moving beyond individual artifacts, we find evidence of industrial-scale operations that challenge every assumption about ancient production capabilities. In Turkey, archaeologists discovered underground cities that could house thousands of people, complete with ventilation systems, water distribution networks, and storage facilities that demonstrate sophisticated urban planning and engineering knowledge. These weren't primitive cave dwellings. These were engineered underground complexes that required advanced knowledge of structural mechanics, airflow dynamics, and hydraulic systems. The ventilation alone represents an engineering marvel that rivals modern subway systems. The ancient builders created air circulation networks that maintain breathable atmosphere throughout multi-level underground complexes. The system uses pressure differentials, thermal dynamics, and strategic positioning of air shafts to create continuous airflow without mechanical assistance. Understanding these principles requires knowledge of fluid dynamics and thermodynamics that wasn't supposed to exist for millennia. The water systems demonstrate equally sophisticated engineering. Underground aqueducts transport water across vast distances using gravity feed systems that maintain consistent flow rates. Despite elevation changes and geological obstacles, the builders calculated hydraulic gradients, understood pressure dynamics, and engineered distribution networks that supplied fresh water to thousands of residents living in underground cities. These systems functioned continuously for centuries without maintenance, suggesting engineering principles that exceed many modern utility systems. But perhaps the most disturbing evidence comes from examining what happened to these advanced capabilities. Rather than showing progressive development over time, the archaeological record reveals a pattern of declining sophistication. Later cultures consistently demonstrate less advanced techniques, smaller construction projects, and simplified engineering solutions. It's as if humanity lost access to sophisticated knowledge systems and spent millennia trying to rediscover capabilities that earlier civilizations took for granted. This reverse development pattern appears across multiple civilizations and geographic regions. In Egypt, the earliest pyramids demonstrate the most advanced construction techniques, while later attempts show declining precision and simplified methods. In South America, the oldest megalithic sites display the most sophisticated stone cutting and fitting techniques, with later cultures unable to replicate the precision of their predecessors. The pattern suggests that advanced knowledge was lost rather than developed over time. The implications become even more significant when we examine the timing of this knowledge loss. Across multiple continents, sophisticated construction techniques and advanced technologies disappear from the archaeological record during roughly the same time periods. Between 8,000 and 6,000 years ago, evidence of advanced capabilities vanishes from sites worldwide, replaced by simpler techniques and smaller scale projects. Either multiple independent civilizations simultaneously forgot their most advanced knowledge, or some global event disrupted the transmission of sophisticated technical information. The synchronization of this knowledge loss across isolated geographic regions challenges conventional explanations. Climate change, natural disasters, or social upheaval might explain technological decline in one region, but identical patterns appearing simultaneously across multiple continents suggests coordinated disruption that affected global knowledge systems. Something happened that systematically eliminated evidence of advanced capabilities from human memory and technical traditions. Even more puzzling is the consistency of what survived versus what disappeared. Basic construction techniques, simple tool-making, and fundamental agricultural knowledge continued across the transition period. But advanced mathematics, precision engineering, sophisticated metallurgy, and complex astronomical knowledge vanished almost completely. The pattern suggests selective elimination of high-level technical knowledge while preserving only basic survival skills. This selective knowledge loss appears in written records as well as physical artifacts. Ancient texts contain references to advanced technologies, sophisticated engineering projects, and complex mathematical knowledge that later scribes clearly didn't understand. Descriptions of flying vehicles, energy manipulation devices, and communication technologies appear in texts from multiple cultures, but the technical details were either never recorded or deliberately obscured by later copyists who lacked the knowledge to understand what they were transcribing. The mathematical knowledge encoded in surviving monuments provides another layer of evidence for lost sophistication. Ancient structures incorporate mathematical relationships that weren't formally discovered until modern times, including advanced geometric principles, complex astronomical calculations, and possibly even physics constants that relate to fundamental properties of matter and energy. These mathematical relationships appear consistently across structures built by supposedly unconnected cultures, suggesting shared knowledge systems that encompassed advanced scientific principles. At Giza, the mathematical relationships encoded in pyramid dimensions include the golden ratio, pi, and possibly even the speed of light expressed in ancient measurement units. The precision required to incorporate these constants into massive stone constructions suggests the builders possessed mathematical knowledge that exceeded formal mathematical development by thousands of years. They weren't approximating these values. They were using exact mathematical relationships that require sophisticated understanding of number theory and geometric principles. Similar mathematical sophistication appears in megalithic sites across Europe, where stone circles incorporate complex geometric relationships that demonstrate advanced knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and possibly even quantum mechanics principles. The builders understood how mathematical relationships affect physical structures, how geometric proportions influence electromagnetic fields, and how numerical ratios optimize acoustic properties. They were applying mathematical principles that modern science is only beginning to rediscover. The astronomical knowledge embedded in ancient structures reveals understanding of celestial mechanics that rivals modern computational astronomy. Ancient builders tracked precession cycles that spanned 26,000 years, calculated planetary orbital periods with accuracy that matches contemporary measurements, and predicted celestial events with precision that requires advanced mathematical modeling. They possessed astronomical knowledge that encompassed deep time scales and complex mathematical relationships that modern astronomy requires computer assistance to calculate. But the most compelling evidence for lost global civilization comes from examining the educational systems that must have existed to transmit such sophisticated knowledge. Creating the monuments we've examined required not just individual genius, but systematic education that could train thousands of skilled craftsmen, engineers, and mathematicians. The consistency of techniques across vast geographic areas suggests standardized educational curricula that taught identical methods and maintained quality control across multiple generations. The precision achieved at these sites couldn't result from trial and error experimentation. It required formal training that taught specific techniques, mathematical principles, and quality standards that were maintained consistently across time and geography. The builders learned these capabilities through systematic education that preserved advanced knowledge and transmitted it accurately across generations. They possessed institutional knowledge that encompassed multiple scientific disciplines and maintained technical standards that modern educational systems struggle to achieve. The evidence points to educational institutions that functioned as universities, teaching advanced mathematics, physics, engineering, and astronomical knowledge to students who became the master builders responsible for megalithic construction projects. These institutions maintained libraries of technical knowledge, standardized measurement systems, and quality control procedures that ensured consistent results across vast construction projects spanning multiple decades or centuries. The systematic nature of this lost knowledge becomes apparent when we examine the precision with which it was applied. Ancient builders didn't approximate advanced techniques. They executed them with mathematical accuracy that suggests formal training and standardized procedures. The consistency across multiple sites and cultures indicates shared educational systems that taught identical methods and maintained identical quality standards regardless of geographic location or cultural context. This lost educational infrastructure represents perhaps the most significant evidence for advanced ancient civilization. Creating the monuments we've examined required not just advanced knowledge, but systematic methods for preserving and transmitting that knowledge across generations. The builders possessed institutional systems that could educate thousands of specialists, coordinate massive construction projects, and maintain technical standards that exceed many contemporary capabilities. The implications challenge everything we think we know about human development and the nature of civilization itself. Either our ancestors possessed knowledge systems that were systematically destroyed and forgotten, or human civilization has experienced cycles of advancement and decline that aren't reflected in conventional historical narratives. The evidence suggests that sophisticated knowledge has been lost and rediscovered multiple times throughout human history, with our current technological civilization representing just the latest attempt to rebuild capabilities that once existed at levels we're only beginning to approach. The systematic destruction of this knowledge wasn't accidental. Evidence from around the world suggests deliberate efforts to eliminate traces of advanced ancient capabilities. Sites were buried under massive amounts of earth, technical documents were destroyed, and educational institutions were systematically dismantled. What we're looking at isn't natural knowledge lost through cultural decline. This appears to be coordinated elimination of information that someone didn't want preserved for future generations. The timing of this destruction correlates with major climate events and geological disruptions that occurred roughly 8,000 to 10,000 years ago. But while natural disasters might explain the loss of physical infrastructure, they don't explain the systematic removal of knowledge from cultural memory. Oral traditions typically preserve important information across multiple generations, yet advanced technical knowledge vanished so completely that later cultures had no memory of their predecessors' capabilities. This suggests that the destruction wasn't just physical, but psychological. Entire populations somehow lost access to knowledge systems that had existed for millennia. Either the carriers of this knowledge were eliminated, or the information was deliberately suppressed by surviving groups who understood its dangerous potential. The pattern indicates conscious effort to erase specific types of knowledge while preserving basic survival information. The selectivity becomes even more apparent when we examine what survived versus what disappeared. Agricultural techniques, basic toolmaking, and simple construction methods continued across the transition period, but advanced mathematics, precision engineering, electromagnetic manipulation, and astronomical computation vanished almost completely. Someone or some group made deliberate decisions about which knowledge deserved preservation and which represented threats that required elimination. This selective preservation appears in ancient texts, that describe advanced technologies in deliberately obscured language. References to flying vehicles become mythological stories about gods traveling through the sky. Descriptions of energy manipulation devices transform into tales of magical artifacts with supernatural powers. Technical knowledge was preserved in symbolic form that concealed its practical applications from populations that lacked the education to understand the underlying principles. The pattern suggests that surviving elites possessed enough knowledge to recognize advanced technologies, but lacked the institutional infrastructure to maintain or reproduce them. They preserved references to lost capabilities in religious and mythological contexts, creating cultural memories that acknowledged the existence of advanced knowledge while ensuring it remained inaccessible to future generations who might attempt to reconstruct dangerous capabilities. These mythological preservations appear consistently across cultures that supposedly had no contact with each other. Stories of flying vehicles, energy weapons, communication devices, and transportation technologies appear in ancient texts from Asia, Africa, Europe, and the Americas. The consistency of these descriptions suggests their cultural memories of real technologies rather than independent mythological creations. But the most disturbing aspect of this knowledge loss is what it reveals about the cyclical nature of human civilization. The evidence suggests that technological advancement isn't a linear progression from primitive to sophisticated. Instead, human societies appear to experience cycles of development and collapse that periodically reset technological capabilities to basic survival levels. Our current technological civilization might represent just the latest attempt to rebuild knowledge that has been lost and rediscovered multiple times throughout history. The archaeological evidence supports this cyclical model. Advanced capabilities appear suddenly in the historical record, without gradual development phases, flourish for relatively brief periods, then vanish completely, leaving only primitive remnants. Later cultures rediscover basic principles and gradually rebuild technological infrastructure until they approach the sophistication of their predecessors. Then the cycle repeats with another period of collapse and knowledge loss. This pattern has profound implications for understanding our current technological trajectory. If human civilization has experienced multiple cycles of advancement and collapse, then our modern achievements might not represent unprecedented human capability, but rather the rediscovery of knowledge that existed previously in different forms. We might be rebuilding technologies that our ancestors mastered thousands of years ago, using different approaches and materials. The electromagnetic properties discovered at megalithic sites suggest that ancient builders understood energy manipulation principles that we're only beginning to rediscover through modern physics research. Their acoustic engineering demonstrates knowledge of consciousness manipulation that contemporary neuroscience is struggling to understand. Their precision manufacturing reveals materials science capabilities that challenge our most advanced production techniques. Consider the implications for modern technology development. If ancient builders possessed knowledge of electromagnetic field manipulation, consciousness effects, and precision manufacturing that exceeded current capabilities, then studying their techniques might accelerate contemporary research by centuries. The mathematical relationships encoded in their monuments could provide insights into fundamental physics principles that we haven't yet discovered through conventional scientific investigation. But accessing this knowledge requires acknowledging that our ancestors possessed capabilities that challenge fundamental assumptions about human development and technological progress. It means accepting that sophisticated knowledge has been lost multiple times throughout history, and that our current understanding of ancient capabilities is fundamentally incomplete. It requires recognizing that conventional archaeology has systematically minimized evidence that doesn't fit established timelines and theoretical frameworks. The resistance to acknowledging advanced ancient capabilities isn't just academic stubbornness. It challenges the entire narrative of human progress that underlies modern civilization. If our ancestors possessed knowledge that we've lost, then technological advancement isn't inevitable progress, but cyclical rediscovery. If sophisticated capabilities existed thousands of years ago, then our modern achievements represent recovery rather than unprecedented innovation. This cyclical model also raises disturbing questions about the stability of our current technological civilization. If previous advanced cultures collapsed and lost their knowledge, what factors might trigger similar collapse in contemporary society? The ancient evidence suggests that technological sophistication doesn't guarantee civilizational survival. Advanced capabilities might even create vulnerabilities that contribute to eventual collapse and knowledge loss. The evidence stands before us, undeniable and overwhelming. From the impossible precision of Göbekli Tepe to the electromagnetic sophistication of Karnak, from the mass production techniques of Puma Punku to the computational genius of the Antikythera mechanism, we're looking at proof that human civilization has reached heights we're only now beginning to understand. These weren't isolated achievements by primitive cultures. These were the products of a connected global civilization that possessed knowledge systems we've spent millennia trying to rediscover. The mathematical odds of such sophisticated techniques developing independently across every continent are so astronomically small they approach impossibility. What we're witnessing is evidence of cycles of human advancement and collapse that challenge everything we've been taught about our past. Our ancestors weren't primitive cave dwellers slowly climbing toward enlightenment. They were sophisticated engineers, mathematicians, and scientists whose knowledge was systematically erased from history. The question isn't whether this lost civilization existed. The question is, what happened to destroy it so completely that we forgot it ever existed at all?